Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. These are your mental health minutes. My name is Tarsha Wiggins. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and certified alcohol and drug counselor. Our topic today is going to be about boundaries. For those of you who haven't checked out my Facebook Live, we just had an awesome lunch conversation talking a little bit about boundaries and thought that we'll kind of keep that conversation going a little bit in our mental health minutes video today. Before I jump into our content, as you'll hear me say in every video, these videos are intended for you to be educated, not intended for you to self-diagnose and treat yourself independently. Please, please, please always consult a behavioral health professional when you need some direction and guidance in regards to your mental health. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. I'm hoping today to kind of give you a couple 3 tips about boundaries, and then talking a little bit about how we can employ these boundaries in different areas of our life. All right. So the first tip is to be grant yourself permission to just focus on yourself. We're just coming off celebrating Mother's Day, and I think a lot of people struggle with finding time to care for themselves or just simply putting themselves first. So in doing this, as we embark the conversation of creating boundaries, one of the things we have to do is first and foremost identify that this is an area that I'm going to put some work into. I'm going to give myself permission to think about how I'm feeling, where I need to place boundaries, and how I can do that. One way in which individuals can figure out where they may need to employ boundaries is once you give yourself the space to do that, is to then start employing and figuring out, how do I feel? A lot of times when I work with individuals on a one-to-one basis, that was one of the things people often struggle with, was feeling identification. It's usually happy, mad, or sad. But our feelings and our emotions, we have such a range, and we just sometimes have to consciously do the work and explore and ask ourselves, how am I feeling? Thinking outside the box on that. And some of you guys may be wondering, like, well, why is that important? Sometimes as we try to identify boundaries and how we identify boundaries, we want to look at the ideal of a boundary being that this is something that can keep the good stuff in, and maybe keep some of the things out that take my peace, that take my joy, that makes me feel some type of way, or things that just make me feel deflated, or it triggers me, or maybe it triggers my anxiety, or things like that. So when we talk about boundaries, that's why it's important for us to first start off with some feeling identification, so we can help us identify where we want to set those boundaries. So a good couple techniques I work with people on is simple I say simple, but for individuals that's not very familiar with this, can be pretty challenging. Is to really just ask yourself, how do I feel? And a great way to do that is looking at information or situations in our life and asking, when blank happens, I feel. Okay? So when blank, feel in a situation, the phone call, a person, a scenario, I feel, and think about, how does that make you feel? What's your immediate thought? What's your immediate feeling that comes to mind? And just kind of keeping track of, like, what kind of feelings am I feeling? What that may help us identify where we want to employ boundaries. Another tip when we talk about boundaries is also figuring out or identifying what that boundary should look like and how we set those limits. One of the difficult things in doing that for a lot of people is, once you identify this is what my need is, talking about that to other people. So you may have realized, as you've gone through some thinking and identifying, like, things that take away your joy or your peace or your calmness, you may say, well, okay, this area is something that I need to set a limit on. I'm only allowing so much of this. Or a really good example, I think right now, even as we work from home during COVID, is my lunch break is my lunch break. Like, I'm going to protect that time, because when I don't have my lunch, when I don't have those healthy breaks, I am shorter with people. I feel frustrated, things like that. So then it becomes, I've identified that that's something that I need. I'm going to protect this boundary. How do I convey that to other people? And the conveying of that message is very important. I always think back to things that my mom has always told me. It's not what you say, but it's how you say it. So I can express to someone rudely or very, very guarded that no, I'm not going to do this, or this is my time and I'm not doing any of it, doing X, Y, or Z. Or I can express this very empathetically, very warmly, like, I understand that there's a need, but this is my lunch break and this is a time that I set aside for me. Period. I don't necessarily have to go into detail about why that's important for me, how that affects me, but I'm simply just saying this is my need, and I'm leaving it at that. I'm not waiting for somebody else to validate that what I need is okay. I'm telling you that that's my need and that's my limit, or this is my boundary. So just kind of keep that in mind as we talk about boundaries as well. A third tip that I think is really, really good as we talk about boundaries is being consistent. People are going to test you. And that's not necessarily because they want to steal your peace or your joy, or they want to see you upset or frustrated or overwhelmed. More than likely it's because other people or other things are trying to have their needs met. So a great example may be, and I think really a lot about work, because I think that was a boundary I really had to work on during the pandemic. But I think a really good example is when you get that email or that invite to meet over the lunch hour, or asking you to stay on for a meeting that's going to run late. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, well, I have to be consistent. I have to be vocal. And it gives me an opportunity to continue to practice how I want to express my need as well. Okay. One other thing I think is very important that we talk about being consistent is one, knowing that people or situations or circumstances may challenge that. So we need to be consistent for ourselves. But we also, when we're being consistent, that is not something that we have to apologize about. I think sometimes as we say no, we tend to say, oh, I'm so sorry, but and now I'm going to say but I'm going to say, but this is something that's for you. This is something that's going to help you stay well. We, again, think of the boundary not in the sense of something negative, but thinking about boundaries in the sense that this is something that's going to help me stay well. This is something that's going to help me continue to be the best version of myself. Okay. So just keep those things in mind. So 3 quick tips about boundaries. 1, grant yourself the opportunity to focus on yourself, to address the needs that you have in your life. Then 2, work on your messaging of what that looks like for you. You figured out these are things that may bring about emotions or takes joy or peace or serenity from me, and that's not what I want. I'm going to limit that. I'm going to put some things in place, and after you figure that out, you have to convey that to people, and not necessarily being apologetic about it. This is what I need. And then 3, we want to be consistent with that. I understand life comes up, things do happen, but for the most part, we have to be consistent in doing the things that work for us. And people, places, and things will try to challenge that, but it's up to us to guard that and to keep the things that works well for us going. Other things I'm just going to mention really briefly about boundaries is that as we talk about boundaries, start off small. This can be a topic that can be very overwhelming, but there are opportunities for us to practice this in every facet of our life. There are boundaries in the area of physical things like physical touch or physical space. This is my room. These are my items, right? Also think about boundaries in a sense of intellectual boundaries. What thoughts or ideas or conversations are comfortable for me, and things that I'm not going to engage in, or things I don't want to be a part of. Right? This can be a very good example when we talk about conversational boundaries, meeting a new person in a relationship. What am I comfortable discussing with this person? What things should I hold off on doing, or things that if there's someone else is putting on me, things that I want to say, no thanks, I don't want to take that on. Another area where we can start to think about developing boundaries is emotionally. I think this is very huge, especially in the pandemic, where a lot of people really started to become overwhelmed with our situations, maybe worsening of depression or anxiety and things like that. So it was a lot of times people may be reaching out for help or support, but if you're someone that you too may not be doing as well as you like, it's very hard to help someone else. So you have to set those emotional boundaries, those limits for yourself as well. And this is also very common for people that are in early recovery, kind of changing people, places, and things. A very common phrase and area of treatment or area of work. Individuals that early in recovery are recognizing that I have to change these things around me. Some of these peoples or places or things can trigger me, that can take me back to things that I'm trying to change my behavior to. And that's no different when we talk about an emotional boundary, like me being around or being engaging in perhaps engaging with someone who's struggling emotionally can really bring me down emotionally. So I have to set that boundary to stay well for myself. Other areas are for opportunity to practice developing some boundaries includes time. Oh boy, guys, just because we're at home, just because we're working from home, we are pretty available in a lot of ways, meaning our phones, technology, computers, Instagram, all this stuff. Like we constantly appear available and accessible to other people. But one thing for sure is that we only have so much time in a day and we want to use it wisely. So this is a great way to start employing boundaries, setting limits for yourself. You may have to set a boundary for yourself that I'm only going to engage in social media for 1 hour a day, whatever that hour may look like, but I need to set a limit on this, right? Or maybe I need to set a limit on how I make myself available for other people, because I know when I'm doing more for people, or when I'm doing a lot for other people, that tends to drain me, and then I don't have the time to pour back into myself, right? So these are just other tips and areas where boundaries, as we talk about, it doesn't have to be this really big, broad topic. It really can be areas where we start off small. We start identifying what I need, how do these things make me feel, practice how I message that, and then I be consistent. And then over time, that can branch out to, work relationships, personal relationships. Maybe I need to set boundaries within myself. I'm working on my own thoughts, and I need to set boundaries where behaviors or things that I'm not going to do for myself because I love me, or I'm caring for me, or I'm learning how to care better for me. So it's not like, oh, okay, I'm just going to go and just set 30 boundaries and just start off with really big ideas, but it really starts with a small place. Like, I'm going to start on these small things or the easy things and master that and become comfortable with setting boundaries. And then you can branch out to something maybe a bit more challenging. Those were your mental health minutes today. I hope you found them helpful. As you'll hear me say every video, take care of yourself, do something great for somebody else today as well. And in every video, you also hear me say at the end now too, if you're interested in communicating more with me, you can connect with me on Facebook. My name is Tarsha Wiggins, and I have a mental health minutes page. You also can continue to thumbs up, like, and subscribe to my YouTube channel here. And then there's also information in the description below on how you can connect with me via email as well. Those were your mental health minutes. I hope you have an amazing day.